America's bans on bets don't just cause trouble for gamblers. They also deprive us of information that might save lives. Information people get from something called prediction markets. The biggest one's called Intrade.com. It's based in Ireland because, well, if it were based in America, the owners would be in jail.
At the Intrade website, people bet on the future. Do you think that the Republicans will take the House of Representatives next election? On Intrade, people put their money where their mouths are. Right now, the bettors on Intrade say there's about a 50% chance. As you can see from the graph, earlier this year it cost only 20 cents to win $1 if the Republicans take the House, but now it's up to 47 cents. Roughly an even bet.
We're not going to stand for it anymore.
In 2012, will Sarah Palin be the Republican presidential nominee? The bettors say there's a 24% chance.
Think that's wrong? Think you know better? Should be higher or lower? You could make money on Intrade. If you think Palin's less likely to win, go on Intrade and sell Palin futures. Make money if she loses. But I'd hesitate before I bet against the crowds of bettors on Intrade, because in the past, when it comes to predicting things, compared to even the biggest polling companies like Gallup, Intrade has been more accurate. Much more accurate. One study found Intrade has just half the margin of error of national polls.
In 2004, the odds on Intrade predicted every state's presidential support.
As you can see, the Obama lead now in electoral votes.
In 2008, Intrade predicted every state except for one.
This is Missouri, still too close to call.
Among other predictions, when American soldiers were trying to find Saddam Hussein, Intrade took bets on when he would be found. Right before he was captured, the odds for that date more than tripled in price.
And Saddam Hussein was found hiding at the bottom of the hole.
Finally, this year the bettors on Intrade predicted all the major Oscar picks correctly.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Joining us now is James Surowiecki, author of The Wisdom of Crowds. Wisdom of crowds? When I think of crowds, I think of mobs with pitchforks. So what's that about?
Mobs certainly exist, and certainly crowds are sometimes crazy. I mean, look at the stock market bubble of the late 90s or the housing bubble we just went through. But a lot of times, crowds are incredibly smart. Oftentimes, as you mentioned earlier, they're actually smarter than the smartest person in them. And if you can figure out ways to tap the intelligence of a crowd, you can often arrive at extraordinarily good answers.
So the program, Do You Want to Be a Millionaire, illustrates this.
Yeah, so that's a great example. So, you know, on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, if a contestant gets into trouble, they can do a couple things to help themselves out.
Can ask a friend.
A friend who they've said beforehand is kind of an expert in the field. When you go on the show, you say, you know, if the question's in physics, call Bill or whatever. The other thing they can do is they can just poll the audience, basically. Now, the experts get the answers right about 2/3 of the time. Not bad. But the audience gets the answer right 91% of the time.
Hence, Intrade's success.
Yeah, so Intrade is a obviously more sophisticated way of tapping the wisdom of the crowd. It gives people an incentive to actually uncover new information or to think harder about the question because there's money at stake. And in a sense, you only participate if you think you have something smart to say. But what you do is basically the price in a prediction market essentially reflects the kind of collective judgment of the crowd. And in a whole series of events over time, you've seen that crowd's judgment be very, very good.
Tell the story about the Navy looking for a lost submarine.
So this is an example that dates back to the late 1960s. And what happened was in 1968, an American submarine vanished in the North Atlantic Ocean. And the Navy really had no idea what had happened to it. And they also had no idea where it was because, you know, it essentially had disappeared and they weren't sure how far it had traveled since its last radio transmission. So they were looking around. They didn't have any idea how to find it. And a guy came forward, a guy named John Craven. And he said, I think I have an idea for how to find this thing. And what he did was he assembled a diverse crowd. They included mathematicians and salvage men and submariners, Navy men. And basically what he asked them to do was bet on a series of scenarios, things that might have happened to the submarine. Then he asked them to bet on things like how fast you think the submarine was traveling and so on. He took all those bets together. He ran them through this mathematical formula. I won't go into the details of that, but ran them through a mathematical formula. And when he was finished, he had a map of the ocean floor. And on this map, there was this one spot where the group had said, this is where we think it's most likely to be. That was kind of the equivalent of the price in a prediction market. And So they gave the number to the site to the Navy.
And the salvage specialists have been looking for a long time.
And basically they hadn't been able to find it, essentially. And the spot that they had, come up with, the Craven's men had come up with, was nowhere near where the Navy had been looking. And so a Navy ship went out and it found the submarine, and it was 220 yards from where that crowd had said it would be.
Then the government says, well, let's use this collective knowledge to predict maybe the next terrorist attack.
What they did was they were going to set up an experimental prediction market. It was actually going to be open to the public, theoretically. And essentially they were going to ask people not necessarily where is the next attack going to happen, but they wanted to figure out where the hot spots in the world might be, where are problem areas potentially going to arise and the like. And I think the thinking was that there's a lot of information out there that the intelligence community, just for whatever reason, doesn't have access to. We don't know the right people to talk to. They don't want to talk to the United States, whatever. And if we aggregated all of that knowledge and gave people an incentive to actually come and bet, that we might be able to arrive at information, at knowledge that we otherwise would not be able to have.
But it never happened. People went crazy. Senator Byron Dorgan sneered at this ridiculous betting parlor on the Internet. It's ridiculous and grotesque.
Essentially what happened was Dorgan and Wyden held a press conference. And I won't go into the way they had marketed this was a little tasteless. And I think that was part of what kind of got people's hackles up. But in any case, they held a press conference and they sort of said, look at this terrible thing that the government is actually sponsoring, is trying to do. And for whatever reason, at the press conference, there was no one in the audience, there were no reporters who had any knowledge of this, track record that these markets have.
Can do.
Yeah, exactly. So all the questions were things like, how could they have been so stupid to propose this idea? And as a result, the backlash was immense. And the Bush administration ran away from it as fast as they could. As a result, the idea was essentially killed almost overnight.
One more good idea banned by big government. I hope it comes back. I hope Intrade is allowed in the United States. Before we move on to the commercial, here are the latest predictions from Intrade.
Will California be the first state to legalize marijuana? The wisdom of the crowd says, yes, there's a 60% chance. Obamacare.
13 states joined forces to sue the federal government over health care.
Will the individual mandate be ruled unconstitutional? There's a 10% chance, say the bettors. Will Harry Reid survive November's elections? Probably not, say the bettors. There's an 80% chance he'll lose. But the bettors also say President Obama is likely to win in 2012.